we're here. Tonight, welcome to Off the Shelf. Tonight, we're talking about The Librarian Spy. So it's our monthly book chat. We have an in-depth discussion about our monthly book, and we talk about why it is buzzworthy. So I'm Donna. I'm your host tonight, and I'm a New York Times bestselling author of somewhere around 70 romances. But I've always loved historical romance, and I've decided to fully embrace it. So I'm working on my first historical fiction. And you can find me at donnaallward.com. Now, I've got little bios that I haven't memorized yet for everybody. So we're also joined by Renee Bryan, our Step Into the Story cohort. Renee is a former high school teacher, cosmetic company executive, and lifelong ballet enthusiast. She's a multi-published Amazon best-selling author of over 30 novels, and including novels in historical romance and historical fiction. Her latest release, The Widows of Champagne, came out in July of last year, so just a year ago. And your next book is out in December, called The Secret Society of Salzburg. And you can get all her info at reneeryan.com. And we have Barbara Wallace. Barb is the best-selling author of more than 26 novels. Her current project is about the rise and fall of a Greenwich Village clique in the mid-60s, which is just so exciting. When not writing, you'll find Barb doing a lot of reading. She outreads all of us, I think. And on the first Friday of every month, she has a column called Barb's Book Reviews. You can read it in her other blog posts at barbarawallace.com. And tonight, we're especially happy to have with us Theresa Bakken. This is a repeat visit for Theresa. She's an audiobook narrator, and she also has the Desideratum podcast. Theresa is an Emmy Award-winning journalist who began recording audiobooks from her home studio in 2020. She works with producers at Northern Lake Audio and has partnered with authors and publishers on over 25 titles. And you can find her at theresabakkenNarrator.com. Whew, I made it through it all. All right, so we're going to dive into The Librarian Spy. And today is release day, so it's really exciting that we're going to talk about this today when it's just hitting the shelves. And just before the broadcast, we were talking about the audiobook. Since Theresa's a narrator, that's like right in her wheelhouse. And how that just came out today. So we're going to touch on that a little bit later too. And it's just, I'm really excited that we picked today to talk about it. So I'm going to give you the description from the back cover so our readers can kind of get an idea, or our viewers can get an idea of the book. So Ava thought her job as a librarian at the Library of Congress would mean a quiet, routine existence. But an unexpected offer from the U.S. military has brought her to Lisbon with a new mission, posing as a librarian while working undercover as a spy gathering intelligence. Meanwhile, in occupied France, Elaine has begun an apprenticeship at a printing press run by members of the resistance. It's a job usually reserved for men, but in the war, those rules have been forgotten. Yet she knows that the Nazis are searching for the press and its printer in order to silence them. As the battle in Europe rages, Ava and Elaine find themselves connecting through coded messages and discovering hope in the face of war. So before we start, I also want to offer a big thank you to Madeline, who provided us all with advanced copies. So that was really generous and appreciated. All right, so getting on to the actual book itself. And Theresa, you've been here before, so you know that our habit is to talk about the story from the outside in. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the cover. And so, Theresa, why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on the cover?
Oh, I just think I really enjoyed seeing the books and the background of the library. I think that you see these two beautiful women in different poses, but the cover is clearly with old and treasured books. And I think it just, to me, that draws me in. I am not really super attracted to lots of little words and a lot of language on a cover, so I didn't actually even read. I'm not even put the blurb on the cover, but I do love these two women in profile in front of all the books. I thought it was eye-catching.
What about you, Barb?
It's funny. I was iffy when it first came out. I don't know why. I think it was the bar down the middle, but it's growing on me a lot. I think it actually kind of conveys this image of espionage. And I was thinking about it in terms of like, if you saw it in a bookstore, it's very bookstore friendly because it jumps out at you. And I think if I saw this at a table or I saw it on a bookshelf, it would draw my eye to it. Particularly the woman on, well, I guess it's on the right, with the blonde with the lipstick. She's so eye catching. And I really liked it. I think that they did a really nice job. It hits all the right buttons for me as a buyer.
Very good. Renee?
Yeah, I really liked it. It was, I think it's stunning because it's so different from most of the World War II novel covers that are out. You know, usually with the woman with her back to the camera walking. I thought this was such a great departure from that. I think both women, I like how one's a little more cosmopolitan and one looks much more like your average girl walking down the street. And I feel as though that also captures the difference between the two heroines. And I think
is a great point. That's a great point. I didn't even pick up on that. You are so right. You know who they are. Yes.
You know that this is going to be about two very different women. And I think they captured that so well. Yeah. So, and again, I agree with both of Theresa and Barb that it's eye-catching. I love library. Give me books any day. Obviously, we're talking books. But I also believe that, I would absolutely, which I did today, pick it up. So, yep. Love it.
Yeah, I think I agree about the women. I'm totally drawn to the one on my right, which is I'm assuming is Ava. Mm-hmm. And I also agree with you, Theresa. Like I don't mind a little bit of extra text on the cover, but it's not what draws
catches
me
your
in.
Eye, right?
Yeah, but I do find, like Barb said, it's very bookstore friendly. And I was also iffy on the bar down the middle, and it wasn't really like a deal breaker for me. And then it's kind of grown on me because it does sort of show the split between, you know, Ava's in Lisbon and doing her thing, and Elaine is in France and doing her thing. So it does sort of mark that split between them. So it worked for me, and I think if I were to see it on a shelf or a display, I would totally pick it up and want to turn it over and read the back or the flyleaf, whatever, to tell me what the book is about. So I agree. I like the cover a lot, and I also really, really like the clean font. I'm really picky about the font on covers, and they need to be really clear for me. So I really do like the font on this one.
Yeah, I think if you got rid of, I know Kelly Rimmer is the one that gave the quote. I think without that quote, if you put your hand over it, I think it would have popped even more. Yeah, I agree. I love, because she's, you know, Madeline's a New York Times bestselling author. She is at the top of her game. So I'm not sure why she needed all the, you know, not she, but, you know, I think it would have been fine without the quotes, but I love that Kelly Rimmer gave her such a wonderful quote. Yeah. And when you pick it up in real life, I'm like, oh, the quote would have had me pick it up too. So
yeah. All right. So we're going to do something just slightly different from how we've done it before. We have a couple of questions about the book, but first of all, we're going to do overall impressions. So without going into too much detail on things that we're going to cover later, what are your overall impressions of the book? And I'll let whoever wants to go first go first.
We're all so polite. I'll go since everybody's waiting. Having been such a fan of Madeline long before she started writing historical fiction, I found that I was really excited to pick this book up. I love The Last Bookshop in London. I thought that was such a fabulous book. I thought Madeline took it up a notch. And I would say this is impeccably researched. I noticed that in her last book. You can always count on a Madeline Martin book being well-researched. There was a nice fast pace. I love the unique settings. Lyon, France, and Lisbon, Portugal, not either cities really covered. I love the idea. I think fans of historical fiction are going to love this book. her attention to detail sort of brought home the profound dangers between these two main characters. One is more of a covert danger where it's lurking around the corner. The other is in the middle of, it's in her front yard. And I loved how Madeline brought that together and the life and death stakes. That I thought she did a great job. And she and I, last Thursday, she and I had a conversation, and I'll share more if we have time about her process and how she ended up putting the book together. So in case our viewers weren't there for that particular conversation, but I think it was page turning, an homage to unsung heroes and heroines of World War II and the power of the written word. Loved it.
Yes. I'm going to jump in there because the power of the written word is what, like, if I were going to say, even just in the very beginning of the book and how she talks about her love of books, the first sentence is one of those, I'm just sucked right in. It was so beautifully written. But also this, without too much detail, this is about communication and the power of information. And these women, both in their own ways, with the technology of the time, are demonstrating the power of truth and information with the printing press, with the microfilm. And I loved that. It wasn't just the power of the written word. It was how we communicate that globally. And, today you think about how easy that is. And I love when historical fiction reminds you that, literally at one point they can't physically send the newspapers from this country to that country, right? And that's part of what she's involved in the technology of the time just to get that information shared. And we take information so much for granted that it was really cool to think about how valuable that was, how much that could make a difference. And there was like a moment too where we know how the war ended, right? Like we know what happened, but there was something about what you just said about life and death, and Renee, when you were just talking about it. And I think that is really captured. Like they were taking huge risks and without knowing what happened. That makes it a page turner. And the power of women, right? Like this is a story about women. What you said a minute ago, Donna, about how typically these were men's jobs, and they do like brush up against sexism, but they're so empowered to do something in that time. And I love that she based these on real people and real situations. And it's like my favorite kind of historical fiction.
Yes, for sure.
Barb?
Yeah, well, Renee mentioned the pacing, and what I really liked about this book, well, there was a bunch of stuff I really liked, because I think I liked the last bookstore in London, but I liked this one far much more. I think she stepped up her game with this one a lot. And it had all the elements of a good story. And I think when Renee was talking about the pacing, it kind of reminded me of those movies of the 50s and early 60s, like Guns of Navarone and what was the other one I was thinking about? I See a Dark Stranger, where you're not really sure who you can trust, who you can't trust. And there was a tension all the way through it with the espionage and the mystery. And I liked that. And the other thing I liked about it is when you were talking about the power of the word is I look at writing as two different kinds of groups. You have your literary writing, and then you have storytelling. And we've talked about this numerous times offline. Madeline is a storyteller.
Yes.
It means you're going to lose yourself in the book versus paying attention to her words. Someone who's literary, you're aware of the writing. And here it's great writing, but you're not aware of it so much. You're not like, oh, that's a beautiful sentence, because you're in the story. She did a very good, tight story.
Yeah.
Which is why I think readers will really like it.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to to that, actually. I will say that I really, the second half was what really, really grabbed me. I think as the stakes really increased. And especially when we see what you said, Barb, about not knowing who you can trust. And I think that really came out sort of in Ava's storyline more as we went along. I really enjoyed, though, and I think Renee touched on this earlier, that one of the points of view was set in Lisbon, because you don't really hear a lot about Portugal in the war. So I really like that that's a little bit unusual. And even though, a resistance fighter in France is very common in a World War II novel, I'm okay with that. There's a reason why they're popular. I love resistance stories. And so I really had no problem with that. I really enjoyed it. And I agree, Barb, she ups her game with this one in a big way.
The one
So,
thing I would add is she wasn't afraid to she took some risks in the second half of the book. And I don't want to make spoilers for anybody, but
yeah.
she doesn't take a safe route in some of the things. You know, bad things do happen to nice people. That's all I'm going to say.
It's war.
Yeah,
I mean, there's danger. There were arrests. I mean,
she didn't pretend it didn't exist. It
was
reality.
Right. And then in Lisbon, even though it was neutral, I think Madeline and I talked about this in Lisbon, because Lisbon and in Stockholm, Sweden, and then in some of the cities in Switzerland, they were hotbeds for spies because they were neutral, which there was all kinds of clandestine war going on in these cities. There just wasn't actual fighting on the ground. And it was just as dangerous. It was just a different kind of danger.
Yeah.
And I like the juxtaposition where, Madeline had the librarian, the actual librarian spy, eating, not having a ration. And then you get the juxtaposition of watching poor Ava barely getting fed. And I thought even that showed the difference from start to finish. Like that. I really.
Yeah. All right. So because, there's that juxtaposition between Ava and Elaine, and this is told from two different points of view. Is there one point of view that you enjoyed more than the other? Teresa?
Oh, that's a hard question. Well, it's funny because, we were just talking about the cover, right? And you were saying like you were attracted to even more one of the other women on the cover. I would say when the book first began, I think I was more attracted to Ava because this idea of a librarian taking on this role. And like you had said, I didn't really know about Lisbon and Portugal. And so everything that was in her point of view, every chapter that came up of hers, I felt like I was reading something brand new that I had never heard before. And so those chapters maybe moved a little faster for me. But then I think, like Renee said, the pacing of the book and these sort of life-threatening situations I think by the end, I really love both of them. So, but I would say at the beginning, I was really drawn to Ava first.
Renee?
I would have to agree with Teresa. I was really, and maybe it's because we're American. And I think that the difference is, I think that even though Elaine had very specific reasons to get into the war, Ava was sort of tapped to be in the war. And it was that, not that the story happened to her, but it wasn't like this conscious decision. And it was a choice. And she made the choice to do this. And she was so afraid of flying. I mean, I thought even that piece was really strong.
Yes. She felt relatable, didn't she? She felt relatable. The bit about
her parents were killed and this is very early in the story.
Very early in the story,
And I feel like, when I first read this book, I was like, what are the stakes here? I kept asking myself, what are the stakes here? And then I realized when I kind of went through it and I was listening to the audio version, I got a whole different new sense. And one of the things that I noticed was that, yes, the war happened to both of these women, but they were making choices despite their everyday fears of just walking through life and still sort of stepped up. And I think that's what I thought she did a brilliant job of, she being Madeline, of showing that, there's heroics and heroes and opportunities to be a hero and very small moments in our lives. And they didn't sit on the couch and hide. These two women got involved, and I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
So Ava was I would say all through it. And I think just because she just felt more relatable because I'm an American and living a very privileged life. And so I felt like watching her go through that was why I liked her a little better.
I actually, I think I'll be maybe, I don't know what Barb's going to say, but I actually liked Elaine's better. And I think it's because, I think it's because the life and death stakes were just so much stronger for her. And so I really got swept up in that. And again, I don't want to give a spoiler either, but I thought for sure that things were going to go in a different direction than they did at one point. So, so I think I really got caught up in Elaine's a little bit more. So I would say she's probably that's probably my favorite storyline of the two.
Yeah, I like them both, but I have to say the same thing. I think that the stakes were so high for everyone who lived in France that I was really drawn to finding out. Well, first, you want to find out about her family, and then you want to find out about her and whether she survives and what she's doing. And the stakes were always high for her.
Yeah,
and it never stopped. And there were, I guess I know the stakes were high for Ava, but I didn't have that same tension of will she die, will she live, any of that. So I guess
the urgency was just a little bit different.
That's a better word for it. Urgency is the perfect word for it. They both had stakes, but I think Elaine's was more urgent. But and I liked them both. Don't get me wrong. I liked both storylines, but I liked Elaine's a little bit stronger.
All right, and so when it comes to so when Barbara, Renee, and I had all finished and we were talking about this, there are two characters that are pretty pivotal to each heroine that don't actually appear on screen. So, and that would be Elaine's husband and Ava's brother. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just wondering if you have a feeling like you would have liked to have seen those two people included, how you think it would have changed the story. Just some thoughts on that, I guess. Renee, you're nodding, so do you want to go first?
I'll go because I think as a writer and as an author and writing World War II and the book I'm writing right now, The Paris Housekeeper, that's coming out in 2023. 2023. I'm trying to figure out what year. I'm all lost and discombobulated. Is that, I kept thinking as I was reading it, how I would have written it, because I'm technically writing it in a way. And so I really had to, because I would have absolutely opened the book, at least I, as a writer, would have opened the book with Elaine and her husband before what happens to him. I don't want to give any spoilers, but that's how I would write the book. So I had to step back and go, okay, if that's how you would write, that's not to say what Madeline's choice was wrong. And as I sat back and thought, why did she make that choice? Because I think it really was about the women and not the men in their lives. And when I thought about that, I thought, okay, I understand the choice. I think it was a bold choice, and I think she pulled it off. So there's a difference between what I would do and whether or not it was the right choice. And I think it was absolutely the right choice, because every choice is right if with execution. And she executed it brilliantly. And so I had to say that, because when I first read it, I was like, well, that's not the choice I would make. And that's the worst part about being a writer when you're a reader, is to get yourself out of the book.
Right. Barb?
Yep. I think Renee kind of summed it up for me. I was thinking the same thing. I would have liked to have seen Elaine's husband, but ultimately the story was about Elaine. So if I had seen him, if I were doing it by my writer choice, I would have maybe had done a flashback, because she finds out a lot about him. It would be very nice to have seen his personality just once rather than have it all be told. But again, it makes sense because he's not the story. It's Elaine's story. So yeah, I have to agree with what Renee said.
Teresa? I'm saving myself for last. Did you guys notice?
You must have this. You must have a great answer.
I just got something brilliant to say.
Yeah, no, I guess I just didn't. Well, I didn't crave it. I didn't miss it. I felt like it was. There was enough. They were sort of part of the backstory, and they weren't. To me, I knew enough about them, I guess, reading and listening to it. So it's an interesting question, because I do think they are integral to who these women are. Right.
And I think I would have liked to have seen them, but how I would have seen them, I'm not sure. Like, Renee, when you were saying like you would have made a different choice, I think I might have as well. But here's the thing: you don't know either. As a writer, you don't know until you write it if it's going to work or not. So you could write that and go, "Oh, I thought I wanted to do this, but that doesn't work." That's what the delete key's for. But I think I would have liked to have seen that moment. I mean, I was, again, without giving spoilers, but I mean, we find out early on. It's, I mean, basically the first scene in her he doesn't come home. But I think if we had seen some of that, and then the thing with Ava is, I think not seeing, we're told that her brother is such a big motivator for her, but we don't ever see him. So I think if we'd had some memories of him, that might have just sort of made it just a little more intimate. But again, you're telling a story, and how much room do you have?
Right.
Right? There's decisions that have to be made. So
And it certainly worked without them being on the page.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a make or break story point thing or anything. It was just one of those things that came up when we were chatting, like, I wonder if. So so I have one more question, and then we're going to do like our buzzworthy section. And the next one is, on the Goldilocks scale of, I know, this is how I thought of it, of this was too little, this is too much, or this is just right. How did you, because Madeline is a master of research, how did you find the level of research in this one?
I'll go. Just right.
Just right?
That's right.
Yeah. I'm not normally one for travelogue information, but in this case, she dripped it in pretty nicely and it didn't bother me. So I would say, yeah, just right.
Yeah, I think it was just right. I think the only place, but this is me being kind of nerdy, she went into quite a bit of detail about a printing press and parts. And, she kind of described a lot the mechanics. I don't know, maybe it wasn't a lot, but I was kind of on the edge of my seat for that, because I think those sort of forms of how we have disseminated information through time are particularly interesting to me, being a former journalist. And so I think for some people that might have been a part of the book where they were like, get on with it, but I loved it. So I think for me also, just right.
Think about how much work goes into like a printing press, and not just.
And the whole idea of smuggling the parts, where they could assemble it, the sort of clandestine nature of it, and then having the people skilled to know how to use it, like all of those components had to, and there was a line somewhere in that section of the book about, or maybe it was in Ava's, about how storytelling or the process of getting information out isn't just the writer, it's the courier who delivers, it's the printer who sets the type, and I really loved, as a narrator, baby, I loved this idea of many hands involved in getting the story to people. And I thought that was, so for me, knowing those details about it and the way that and also, again, I didn't know about Portugal. And so anytime she even described the cobbles on the street, and then there were details about sort of victory stuff, resistance stuff, like red, white, and like that the French flag, the French flag was, they were not allowed to wear those colors. That she put on red lipstick and a white blouse.
Yeah, wasn't it all the American women were buying Liberty Red lipstick to show their support?
Liberty Red. Yeah, that was like this nice little detail. It was like Elizabeth Arden red lipstick. So so that's another part of the just right for me with the Goldilocks, is that there were moments where I was like, oh, is that real? Wow, I didn't know.
Yes, she dropped in just all these little tidbits that were perfect.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I think, because Renee had done the segment with Madeline the other day on Thursday on research, and you can just tell that Madeline like really enjoys that process and really enjoys the in-person, like going to those locations.
She physically went to those places.
And digging in, and you can tell. And there were a couple of times where I was like, that might be a little bit too much, but again, you could just feel how much she loved it. And really brought that in, and that gives an intimacy to a setting that sometimes you can't achieve with other research. That we could all go.
Right, I kept thinking that. I was so jealous, because every one of her books require. I mean, she goes and just like her next book is set in Warsaw, Poland, and she spent 2 weeks there, and I'm just like, well, okay. I was just,
I know, I'm so jealous.
I would say I forget to feed my characters. I just forget it. And I loved how she had Ava just eating these delicacies.
Oh my gosh, the custard pastries, I'm sorry. I'm goner.
But here's the thing. At first I thought, is this necessary? But then she was so brilliant, because then she would have Ava rationing in the next scene and not being able to eat.
Great juxtaposition. It was a great juxtaposition.
And I thought that was brilliant in terms of, and I felt like it was necessary. So I think that it was a lot of research. I think that's why I read historical fiction and I like it better. My biggest sort of gripe about historical romance, and here I am, I wrote 25 of them, is that my biggest kind of beef about it is that it got a lot of that research gets lost because the romance reader doesn't want that. And I love that the historical reader, to me, it's like, teach me history in a way that I don't have to sit in a classroom for 6 months and take notes. I can read your book and learn more about a city and what was going on during World War II and enjoy myself. And so for that, brilliant. And I would say it was just right.
Right. So, Renee, what then do you think we're going to get to the buzzworthy question.
Okay.
So what makes this book buzzworthy? Deserving of buzz, what's going to make it a slam dunk for her?
I think it's the unique settings. I think that there's so much noise in World War II historical fiction right now, a lot of European set books, but she took it to another level and created a story that sets it apart just because of the settings. So for me, it was the settings and her research it makes it a buzzworthy, stands out over all the noise out there right now.
Barb?
I think the reason, and actually we're hearing a lot of buzz about it, it's getting a lot of 4 and 5 star reviews. It hits every button for readers. Not maybe it's got romance, it's got strong female protagonists, it's got World War II, it's got the French Resistance, it's got mystery, it's got intrigue, it's got strong writing, fast pacing, it's got you're losing yourself in a story that unfolds like a movie. It checks every single box as far as what readers are looking for. So I can't see anyone picking this up and not liking it, because it just scores on every single every single element.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hearing online. Like, everyone is loving it. They lost themselves in the story. And I think that's ultimately what's making it buzzworthy. She wrote a book that appeals to readers.
Well, and I think too that because she saw such, I think for her, surprising success with The Last Bookshop in London, I think readers were looking for a follow-up. And when you have readers who are excited and looking for a follow-up, and then you really deliver, I think that sets you up to be to really create some buzz. And I really did, I know we said it earlier, but I really did feel like I think we are witnessing Madeline's growth as a writer, and I think she's just going to go from strength to strength as she moves on. So I mean, whatever she writes next, I will be picking it up. So I think that's why it works for me. And we will give our guests the last word.
Oh, well, I was just going to add another box that she has checked, and that is that she has partnered with a very talented, skillful narrator.
Right.
And Sasha Madeline does, even if you're not an audiobook listener, I would encourage you to use Audible or wherever you get audiobooks and listen, because both of these women have she delivers, you feel both of those characters, and what the point of view that you're hearing in your head is a very neutral, American, easy to listen to, and then there's an urgency, and there's accent delivered very lightly, very easy to listen to, and yet transports you. Like, I love when an audiobook, I was just lost listening to some of her characters. I think she has great, without being overly done, these characters come to life with her delivery. And I think it's storytelling that lends itself to audio. I think a lot of the language, I don't know, there's just something luxurious about some of the way that she's describing things. And to me, that translates really well to the ear. She has a pacing, we talked about pacing and rhythm, and the narrator interprets. She's very well partnered on this particular story. I think the narrator does a beautiful job.
Madeline's descriptions are, they are definitely 10 plus. She takes it to another level when she describes whatever it is she's going to describe. Yeah.
I always love it when I read a book and it's like, I need to do this better. I need to do that better because it shows me where I'm sort of falling down a little bit. So, and we do have a couple of comments that I missed a few minutes ago. One is hello from Grossmorn, and I know that is Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Sue Slade. I know she is. She's watching from Newfoundland because she is on vacation, and I don't know if you guys know where Grossmorn is, but it's on the west coast of Newfoundland, and it is the most gorgeous national park, and it's massive. And so we actually honeymooned there. So, or part of our honeymoon was there. So
you and Sue, huh?
You know, not Sue and me. No, that would be me and but yeah,
Sue
it's
would have brought books if you honeymooned with her.
Right. And also a hello to Alice Newhouse, who is here from Ripton, Vermont.
Alice,
so I'm
where is Ripton, Vermont? I need to know.
I don't know where Ripton, Vermont
Alice,
is.
what is Ripton near? Actually,
Barb is in Vermont a lot, and this summer, like every other weekend.
Yeah.
I think Sue says it's beautiful weather. Which is unusual for Newfoundland, I got to tell you. So before we sign off, one of the things we do at the end of every broadcast is just share a quick word on what we're currently reading. So what are you reading, Renee?
I brought it with me this time. I'm actually prepared.
Well, you're home now.
I know, right? 2 weeks in the mountains. I am reading The Measure. And Barb, you've read it. I am loving it. I am
really good.
It is
really
it's a debut. It does not read like a debut. It's about it's kind of dystopian. Was that what it would be?
Yeah.
Where, everyone in the world wakes up and there's a little wooden box outside their door for everyone 22 years and older, and there's a string, and the length of the string indicates how long your life will be and how many more years or whatever that you have left to live. And it is just, what will you do with that time? And will you even open your box and look at that string? And what will it do? Will it change everything? What's the difference between 3 weeks, 12 years, or, whatever? And it's very well done. I think the writing is just super clever. I'm gobbling it.
It's really interesting. And the other thing she uses the string is kind of a metaphor for racism. And so there's in the middle, there's some political things going on, and it's very much a reflection of today's racism, but she's replaced it with strings. And it's really, really well done.
Teresa, what are you reading?
So I just finished a book called Hannah and Ariella by Johnny Bernhard, because she's going to be on the Desiderata podcast next week. And it is also told from multiple points of view. So it's interesting that I read these two back to back, because that's sometimes, I don't know, it's interesting when authors can do that successfully. But what I just cracked open that I'm excited to read is The Deception by Kim Taylor Blakemore. And that's her new one coming out.
I heard good things about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
actually, I lie. I heard good thing from Kim.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that.
You liked your last book, so I know this is
yeah,
really good.
I really did. I liked After Alice Fell was the last one, I think, right? And so I just cracked the cover on that. It's been sitting on my nightstand. I've been kind of waiting to get to it, because I will talk to her for the Desideratum podcast as well. And so that's what I'm excited to start, because it's a medium. She does a really beautiful job of Gothic, but also female protagonist. I'm excited to read it.
Well, After Alice Fell had that Gothic feel to it too. So
exactly.
The writing was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Barb, what are you reading, doll?
I haven't really actually read the one I said I was reading last week, which was Eliza Nights. But I am also listening to, my husband and I are listening to The Boys in a Boat.
That's a great book.
By Daniel James Brown. Yeah, we're really loving it. It's about the 1936 gold medal crew team. Which you would think would be a boring topic, but it's not. It's really, really interesting. And the people are interesting in it, and there's a lot of lessons about teamwork and overcoming adversity.
So much about teamwork, yes.
Yeah. Great. My husband's really enjoying it too. We're doing a lot of books that he likes, because we listen to him on tape on the way to Vermont, which is why I wanted to know where Ripton was. And he's really enjoying it too. So
Because Because you're doing all kinds of sailing.
Sailing in St. Albans. Yes.
That's it. I'm reading The Warsaw Orphan, which is so funny because, you know, that Kelly Rimmer gives the quote on the front of the Librarian Spy, and it's like, the author of The Warsaw Orphan. This has been on my TBR for a while, and I'm reading very slowly because I'm summering a lot. So, like today I played hooky and we went kayaking in the afternoon. So I'm having a hard time finding time to work, let alone read. But I really, really like it. It's the first book I've read of hers. And I'm really enjoying it. So that'll be on I'll review it on the Facebook group once I'm finished. So we know what everybody's reading. What are we doing next month, Renee?
We are going to be talking with Kelly. She's one of our book influencers, and we are going to be talking about Vanessa Riley's book, Mother, Sister, Warrior. And I just went to the movies last week, and I saw that there's a movie with Viola Davis about this tribe of female warriors in Africa. And I think it's the same ones. And I'm just so excited to read this book. I'm about halfway through. I set it aside to finish The Measure because The Measure's been technically on top of my to be read pile, but I highly recommend. It's out now, so you have time to read it before we discuss. August 16th, we will be discussing the Sister, Warrior, Mother. And it's got 2 points of view, and they're literally warriors that have been brought into slavery in Barbados and during the Haitian Rebellion. It's very well done.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Theresa, thank you so much for joining us again. So it's great to have you here. And I will make sure that I put our link to our YouTube channel in the comments after. So if people miss it, they can subscribe, and then they can see all of our past videos. And I guess we will see you. Oh, we do have another broadcast coming up before that, Renee.
We do. I'm so sorry. We're going to let Barb tell us about what.
Barb's kind of spearheading that one.
It's kind of a combination. We will be online a little bit live, but we're also going to be doing it through our Facebook. So join our community, because it's somebody in this group is turning 50, and that would be that way. Is turning 50, so we're having a little birthday party for her and giving away books. So it's you guys get the presents, Donna just gets the years. And maybe some cake.
Wow.
And wine.
Yeah. That's a great sales job.
Only a good friend can say that.
It's a nifty Donna's turning 50 party.
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome to the club. You're going to love it.
I'm
great years.
fine with it. Honestly, I was telling someone the other day, I feel better at almost 50 than I did at 45. So what the hell?
There you go.
All right. Well,
30.
What's that?
New 30.
Oh, no, I don't think that's quite right, but that's okay. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.